So, when we plant the seeds to an idea, when we set an intention, doing this during the new moon in Taurus will give it a very powerful impact in our lives. Essentially, we create a space where that seed or that intention sits, and it is being planted in very fertile soil, grow through the soil, and to bloom and to blossom. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And today, I wanted to talk to you about the new moon in Taurus taking place on May 7th. But before I do, did you know that you could connect with me each week on Astrology Hub's Inner Circle? Go to astrologyhub.com/more Christopher. That's astrologyhub.com/more Christopher. That way, you can connect with me each week to get exclusive episodes. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the new moon in Taurus taking place on May 7th. A new moon basically starts a month as far as astrology is concerned. It doesn't always align with the calendar month. The calendar month obviously starts on the first day of the month, so one would think that the month began on May 1st. But in astrology, the new moon can sort of move around, indicating when it's going to start what we call the season of a sign. And so the new moon occurring on May 7th really starts the beginning of the season of Taurus. This is when the energy is planted into the ground and intentions are made. Now, why are we saying that the energy is being planted into the ground? And why are we saying that intentions are being made? Because, as any farmer knows, the dark of the moon is when you plant. That is when you take seeds and you plant them in the soil. If you remember that popular song from the 1970s, which, yes, it dates me, but it was called Wildfire, and it was about a horse. But one of the lines in this song about wildfire, a horse, was, "By the dark of the moon she planted." And that is a reference to the new moon, because it's the only time of month when we do not see the moon in the sky. The moon has essentially passed in front of the sun, and so it is not reflecting the sun's rays, and so it is not illuminated. And this is what we call a new moon. New moons in astrology are famous for planting seeds and making intentions, at least in the West. In the East, new moons have a little bit more of a distressing reputation. And that's because it's during the new moon that one cycle comes to an end and another cycle begins. And there's that period of time of darkness when we do not see the moon in the sky. And in Eastern countries, this was seen as very distressing and very frightening because you didn't know what was up. You know, you might get, for instance, robbed on the road by brigands or robbers who could rob you by the dark of the moon. That's just to show that not all cultures share the same attitude or dispositions towards the planets and their aspects. In any case, in Western astrology, the new moon is very much connected to beginnings. And that is something that I want all of you to focus on as we talk about the new moon in Taurus. So, what is the moon in Taurus like? Well, there are different sorts of planetary dignities in astrology, meaning that there are different signs where a planet can be celebrated or where a planet can be downcast. In this particular case, the moon is in its exaltation in the zodiac sign of Taurus. That means the moon is the most celebrated in the zodiac sign of Taurus. That basically translates to, "This is a good thing." So when we plant the seeds to an idea, when we set an intention, doing this during the new moon in Taurus will give it a very powerful impact in our lives. Essentially, we create a space where that seed or that intention sits, and it is being planted in, metaphorically speaking, very fertile soil. So we expect that intention to sprout and to grow through the soil and to bloom and to blossom. These things are associated with the season of spring. And Taurus is a spring sign here in the Northern Hemisphere. And the reason for that is because astrology originates in the Northern Hemisphere. So the zodiac sign of Taurus takes place in the heart of the spring in the Northern Hemisphere. And for people who live here, you can walk outdoors and you can see immediately that flowers are beginning to bloom, that the leaves are very verdant, they're very green, and there are signs of life really becoming robust. With Aries, which is the cardinal sign of spring, we have the beginning of life, but here in Taurus, we really see that the seeds have sprouted, the plants have come back, and they're really owning their space and their place in the garden. And we are overjoyed because they are so green and are so verdant. So this is the idea that I want you to keep in mind with the new moon in Taurus. For people who have new moons in Taurus, for people who are blessed actually with the new moon in Taurus, they have what I call a miracle grow moon. In other words, everything that they touch grows. This can be a business, this can be a family, this can be love, this can be a project. They just have this ability to make things grow. Not only, I mean, that's not just that they're good with plants, but they're good with animals, they're good with people, and they also can grow money, which is associated to the zodiac sign of Taurus. So these are qualities that people with a moon in Taurus generally have. And during that time of year, when the new moon is taking place in the zodiac sign of Taurus, this quality, which can be sort of exclusive to those particular horoscopes, becomes inclusive or made available to the rest of us. So how is this new moon in Taurus going to affect each of the 12 zodiac signs? Well, let's begin with Aries. Aries, as I mentioned just previously, is the zodiac sign of the spring equinox. It signals when the agricultural year begins. And we see this with plants beginning to just sprout above the top of the ground and buds beginning to show themselves on trees. And this looks rather lovely. But if you look a little closer, what's going on is actually this rush to survive, because no sooner are the plants beginning to bud and the green shoots are pressing up through the soil, then weeds are appearing, and weeds are appearing ready to strangle the life out of any plant that's appearing above the soil. Also, what takes place here in the Northern Hemisphere with Aries is we still can have chilly nights. And these chilly nights can wipe out any sort of new and burgeoning growth. So this goes a little ways to sort of describe the urgency of Aries. And the urgency of Aries became even more so last month because of the solar eclipse and with all that fiery energy that was coursing through everyone's horoscopes. So what we can expect for Aries this month is with the new moon in Taurus, that there will be a kind of slowing down. This is often told to the fire signs whenever earth energy is prevalent. They're told to slow down and to moderate your pace. And fire signs always are like, I don't feel like slowing down. I don't feel like moderating my pace. But there's something that's different going on here with Taurus. Taurus will make you, Aries, put the brakes on your impulses, okay? And so, yes, I'm telling you this new moon will be telling you to slow down, but it's not telling you to slow down in a cautionary way. This new moon will be telling you to slow down, to put the brakes on your impulses in a do the math first sort of way. In other words, you may have this impulse or this action step that you want to take, but have you done the math first? Have you figured out what the consequences are going to be? Is acting right now the best time to really act? This is what Taurus does because it's an earth energy. We often use the word grounding, and grounding is a pretty good word. But what earth signs do, and particularly Taurus does, is that they take into account what the consequences are going to be of an action. There's a sort of plan ahead type of quality, which makes sense for Taurus, which is a zodiac sign, which is famously associated with gardening. Okay, you want to plan the plots, and so you want to calculate whether this is the best impulse or whether this is the best time to act on an impulse. And this is something that people born under the zodiac sign of Aries will be experiencing between May 7th and May 23rd. This idea of doing the math before going ahead and taking an action. And also, just in terms of sizing up what your circumstances are, is this the best time to do it? In other words, is this the best ground that you can be standing on in order to go ahead and get the best results for the action that you are going to take? If you were born under the zodiac sign of Taurus, this new moon is going to bring out all of your basic impulses, all of your gut impulses. It's a new moon. It's a young moon. It's not a first quarter. It's not full. It's not robust. This is a starting out sort of moon. And so it's going to be more, I use the word instinctual, but actually maybe the word that I want to use is more habitual. Taurus is a lovely sign in the zodiac. I love Taurus. All right. So Taurus is the first of the three earth signs, and earth signs, as we all know, are practical and able-bodied. And they're the signs that are the most focused on health and wealth. These are the two things that are most important to the earth signs being Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. But of the three earth signs, Taurus is the most optimistic. Virgo has a tendency to worry about whether it's done the job right, whether it's dotted the I's and crossed the T's. And Capricorns just worry. No, actually, Capricorns, well, really do just worry, but Capricorns are always very sensitive to scarcity of resources, that time may run out, the money may run out. There might not be enough to carry over or to get you through to the end of a project or an assignment. So Capricorns are very worried, tend to worry a lot about money running out and time running out. These are not the worries of Taurus. The reason that they are not the worries of Taurus is because Taurus is a spring sign. Okay, it's early in the agricultural year. So people born under Taurus have a natural optimism that things are going to turn out. Now, that doesn't mean that they're just going to sit back and be like, well, things are going to turn out for the best, so I don't have to do anything. No, all earth signs are industrious. All earth signs pull the plow. All earth signs push their shoulder to the wheel, and Taurus is just the same. But Taurus just has a more optimistic attitude about work and about money. I work really hard and I'll get paid what I get paid, and that's what I earned, and I can go and spend it if I like, or I can save it if I like, and there will be plenty of more work in the future, and I'm okay. So Taurus really has the most optimistic view of life, particularly life on Earth, which is basically what defines all the Earth signs. But what can happen with a new moon in Taurus is that it can bring up the idea of making safe choices. People born under the zodiac sign of Taurus tend to make safe choices. That doesn't mean that they're risk averse. It means that, well, if this worked before, this should work again. So why don't I just keep doing what I'm doing if it keeps producing good results? And it's basically the axiom or the motto, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is kind of Taurus's MO. But after a while, safe choices can add up. And what I mean by safe choices can add up is that after a while, if you're born under the zodiac sign of Taurus, and this new moon might sort of bring up this idea, after a while, you can lower your sights. After a while, you can talk yourself out of opportunities. And after a while, you can make decisions based on convenience. All right. And this is something that you, Taurus, might want to keep in mind during this new moon. Are you doing this? And the image that I want to share with you, the idea that I would like you to keep in mind, is that every plant needs repotting or it gets root bound. All right. And so likewise, if you don't go and explore those greener pastures from time to time, then you're going to become stagnant. So going and exploring greener pastures, going and exploring possibilities that wouldn't have occurred to you before, it might not have been in easy reach. What this does is that this promotes growth and it keeps you from getting stuck in a rut. Now, Gemini is the zodiac sign that follows Taurus. They're buddies. They're next to each other on the zodiacal circle. And Gemini is also a spring sign. Indeed, Gemini is the sign that closes the spring. So Gemini, being of the element of air and being mutable in its nature, is very changeable and very adaptable. And because it's ruled by Mercury, it's also very curious. Geminis like to play with variables the way that children will push around vegetables on their plate. Okay, it's just something that they do until they come up with an idea or a way to go. So Geminis just sort of like to play with an idea, and sometimes this can be creative, and sometimes this can be a marvelous form of procrastination. What happens with the new moon in Taurus is that this new moon emphasizes the persistence and fixity of Taurus. As I said before, Gemini is a mutable sign, meaning changeable and of changing interests and always curious. Taurus is a fixed sign, meaning it's going to stand its ground and not change. And so, with that fixity and with that persistence, there will be an insistence from this new moon energy that you, Gemini, have only one way of doing things. All right. So essentially, what this new moon energy is seeding in the Gemini horoscope is there is just one way of doing things, and you either do it that way or you don't. Now, for some of us, this might be like, well, that's a no-brainer, like, okay, one way of doing something, and you either do it that way or not, and okay, let's do it. Okay. If you want to get Gemini to not do something, tell them that they have to do it. All right. So this idea that there's only one way of doing something, and I don't have any choices, and I don't have any options, and I don't have any other things that I can do with it, this really makes Gemini feel squirmy, for lack of a better word. They get really uncomfortable with this idea of this only one way of doing something. Well, who says there's one way of doing something? I question this one way of doing something. How do we know that there's not a better way of doing something? Why don't we go through the lists and all the possibilities of what could be a better way of doing something? It's almost like Geminis take this as an intellectual dare, as a personal challenge, maybe even an affront. And so Geminis can have, when they're faced with something like this, a contrary for contrary's sake reaction to a situation like this. And so, as a Gemini, you may feel the need to explore all the different options and to go and question a whole bunch of different people and see if this could be improved upon and that could be improved upon and whatever. And if you need to do this, go ahead and do it. But I can tell you that it's a new moon in Taurus, and you're not going to get very far with it. Uh, Chances are, at the end of the day, you're going to come back and adopt the one way that you have to do something. Now, this isn't Gemini's being uprated, or this isn't Gemini's being limited in some sort of way. What this is that Jupiter has yet to enter your sign, all right? Jupiter is going to enter the zodiac sign of Gemini on May 25th. But in this period leading up to May 25th, Jupiter is completing its stay in the zodiac sign of Taurus. All right, so Jupiter is a culminating energy. You don't want to go against a planet when it's culminating. Okay, so with the Jupiter in Taurus, it's bringing an end to its tenure here in Taurus. You don't want to start introducing new ideas. It's kind of like a president coming to the end of their term. Let's say they're coming to the end of the term, and all of a sudden you're coming on in and you're saying, we should go ahead and promote these policies. You don't promote policies when you're coming to the end of a presidential term. You're ending the term and getting ready to transfer the energy to someone else. In the case of Gemini, Jupiter's about to transfer to your sign. So this isn't the time to go and resist or look for other ways or something like that. Let let the Jupiter energy lead in Taurus. It's very much bringing about fixity and persistence. So intone those ideas into your life, and then you get to do whatever you want to do when Jupiter enters your zodiac sign on May 25th. For people born under Cancer, this new moon is fantastic. As I was saying earlier, this is an exalted moon. This is the moon at its most celebrated. The moon is the ruling planet of Cancer, and what the moon as ruler of Cancer stands for is the season of abundance. Cancer is the cardinal sign that heralds the beginning of summer. And so this is a time of abundance, and the moon is associated with abundance, particularly in the zodiac sign of Cancer. But when the moon is in Taurus, which is preceding the beginning of summer, this is a fertile period. This is when plant life is in its infancy and it needs to be nurtured and it needs to be protected. But also, the ground itself is fertile. Just about any seed thrown into it is going to grow. This is what spring is reacting to, or this is what spring is acting on, is its impulse to grow and its impulse to live. So with this new moon being exalted, what this promises is fertile bodies and fertile imaginations. Fertile bodies, I am not an expert at this, but I have seen Taurus moons either in a chart or through transit progression or appearing as a new moon as being an excellent time for fertility. And seeing that this new moon is leading is going to go and pick up the energy around the 16th of Jupiter, and then leading to May 23rd of its conjunction to Venus and its departing sextile to Neptune and Pisces. This window between this May 7th and this May 23rd may be really quite wonderful for fertility. And so that's something that I would want to suggest as an idea to you. But also, what's going on during this period of time is a fertile imagination. You may feel very close to your creativity. You may feel like you're very much in the flow. Okay, so for people who are composing songs or painting pictures or making films or who are writing, and Cancer is a sign that's very much associated to writing because it's time alone, and time alone with your imagination and time alone with your words and choosing the right words in their kind of invocation like nature, which is very watery. This period from May 7th to May 23rd is wonderful for creativity. But what I want to make a distinction of very quickly is creativity is different from producing. All right. So when I'm talking about creativity, I want to loop it back into the idea of this being a new moon, and this idea of planting seeds. So this is the time to sort of spend time with your creative process and to let yourself create without judgment, without deadline, without being interrupted, and to uh, let yourself participate in that creativity, and with no expectations of having to produce something right away. This is a time when you just really want to let those creative impulses range free for Cancer. And this is exclusive to Cancer because your ruling planet is the moon, and that's what the new moon is doing. It's appearing or going to appear in the zodiac sign of Taurus. So this can be an extremely creative period for Cancer, but let yourself move with the creative impulses and don't put pressure on yourself to produce. This isn't the time to be crunching before a deadline. That's not the sort of creativity that I'm trying to describe for you here. Again, you will be, as a Cancer, you will definitely be reacting to the change in planetary temperament when Venus and Jupiter both go into Gemini. So this is a time when you're really sort of enjoying Jupiter and Venus in Taurus right now, and it's really working with your creative impulses. And so, like a small plant, a young plant, which we have in spring, this is a time that you want to nurture that creativity, and you don't want to be pushing it to be something that's bigger than it is right now. When I think of Leo and this new moon in Taurus, I think of the myth of King Midas and the Golden Touch. We all know, or we're all pretty much familiar with Midas's golden touch, and many of us might very well wish that we had that golden touch. But there's a difference between the idea of a golden touch and a new moon in Taurus, which is all about the touch that makes things grow. So the differences between the golden touch and the touch that makes things grow. In the myth of King Midas, he is hospitable. He is friendly to a satyr named Silenus, that he maybe probably serves a banquet to, or gives refuge overnight or something like that. This satyr Silenus, and Silenus was a companion to the god of wine Dionysus. Now, satyrs were half men, they had the torsos and the heads of men, and then they had the legs of goats. And satyrs were kind of disreputable characters back in Greek mythology. People didn't really trust them. They were always kind of like a little bit, shall we say, lustful. And there was lots of hanky panky, and they were always getting into things that they shouldn't be getting into. But anyway, Silenus is given refuge and hospitality by King Midas. And he is very happy with the hospitality that King Midas has shown him, and says, I will give you any sort of wish that you might want to wish. Um, Personally, I can't give it to you, but I've got an in with Dionysus, and he can grant the wish that you would have. And King Midas, sort of realizing that he's not as rich a king as he could possibly be. Midas was kind of like maybe middle class king. Okay, wishes for a golden touch. And Silenus is like, done. And he goes galloping away on his satyr goat hooves. And so Midas is like delighted with the idea that anything he can touch turns to gold. So he goes and he experiments, and he touches a table and it turns to gold. And he touches a pot and it turns to gold. He touches himself, he doesn't turn to gold, but he touches other things and they turn to gold. He touches pennies and they turn to gold, clearly improving their wealth right off the spot. And so he's absolutely delighted. And after a very industrious morning of touching things and turning it to gold and sort of calculating what all that would mean for him, he decides to sit down to lunch. And he touches the plate, and the plate turns to gold. And he reaches for a leg of chicken, and it turns to gold. He reaches for a goblet, it turns to gold. He drinks the wine turns to gold. Everything is turning to gold. People immediately start backing away from King Midas. They don't want to be touched, and they don't want to be turned into a statue. Either for the fear of being turned into a statue and just being rendered lifeless, or maybe even being turned into a statue and melted down into gold. So all of a sudden, it's very what is good fortune for Midas, where everything he touches turns to gold, suddenly makes him a very unfortunate person for anyone getting near him. They don't want to get near him. They don't want to turn to gold. Midas's daughter hears about this, and she's young. She's like maybe 6 or 7, and she's the apple of his eye. And she's like, Daddy's in trouble. I must go and see him. So she goes running on into his throne room, and she's like, Daddy, I hear that you've got this like little problem. Come, I want to tell you how much I love you, and I will always take your side, and I will always be in your corner. And Midas is like, no, no. And being a young girl, she bounds over to her father and she clasps it around the neck, and she immediately is turned to gold. And he is horrified. The thing that he loves more than anything in the world is his daughter. And so he removes her statue. She's now a statue, He removes her arms from where they were about to clasp his neck and puts it down, and he weeps. He weeps very bitterly, and he prays to the god Dionysus. And Dionysus, realizing that Midas has learned his lesson, all the gods sort of indulge humans so that they can learn their lesson, and I think kind of perhaps learn their place on the hierarchical ladder of life. But Dionysus decides to take pity on Midas, and he tells Midas that he can release himself from his curse by going and bathing in the Pactolus River, which is near Sardis in modern day Turkey. And Midas goes and does this. He bathes in the river, and as he bathes in the river, the drops on the water fall from him, and he sees little gold sparkles like drops of water lowering down into the river itself. And he steps out of the river and he touches something, and it doesn't turn into gold. And he's so relieved. And when he returns to his kingdom, he discovers that everyone has returned to the way that they were before, and that he's not ruling over a kingdom peopled with statues and golden goblets and things like this. The Pactolus River, by the way, maintains its reputation, evidently as being a river of gold, or where one could mine for gold nuggets. And this was in reminiscence, this was in memory of King Midas, who bathed there and was released from his curse. What does this have to do with the new moon in the zodiac sign of Taurus? The new moon in the zodiac sign of Taurus emphasizes growth over gold. All right. Now, Leos can be very hardworking and often are, but Leos have a tendency to really sort of respond, with a purr when it comes to good fortune, and especially when good fortune is given to them, when it's served up on a gold plate. And so, what happens here with the new moon in Taurus is this idea that you want to grow rather than accumulate. Okay, so what this new moon in Taurus is emphasizing for Leo is the idea of working for your own good, working to produce. This changes from Cancer to Leo, and it's working to produce. A lot of stuff that's something else that's connected to gardening, which the zodiac sign of Taurus is very much associated with, is the idea that when you have, for instance, plants that are beginning to sprout, like particularly rose bushes, during this period of time, you actually want to cut them. Or you may want to cut things down to produce growth. This is something that seems counterintuitive. I mean, you're looking at roses and they're growing these beautiful buds, and why should I cut them? I don't want to cut them. I want them to grow and to make beautiful little flowers. Well, part of gardening, aside from weeding, okay, part from gardening is cutting something back, or cutting something down to promote more vigorous growth. So this pruning, this cutting back in order to make something more robust might be something that Leos have a hard time wrapping their mind around. Now, this isn't just going to apply to Leos who happen to garden, during the month of Taurus. No, what I'm talking about is that this idea of cutting back, pruning to promote growth, there's a kind of hard-heartedness to it. This is what needs to be done in order to make more robust growth. And as a Leo, you may be facing similar situations in your life right now where you're making choices of cutting back or pruning. Maybe you're laying off people. Maybe you're lowering your expectations or your deadlines. Maybe you're holding back on something. Maybe you're narrowing your inventory in some sort of way during this period of time, as you feel like you're being forced to adhere to the bottom line. You may have to be cutting back or pruning to adhere to a bottom line. And that might strike you, Leo, as being hard-hearted, and not a nice thing to do. and not a pleasant experience to be experiencing. The new moon in Taurus is going to encourage you to do this, and you may feel hard-hearted in the moment by making a decision that nobody else wants to make. But rest assured that, like planting a seed or pruning something down or cutting something back, this is for future growth and to promote future robustness. And this is something that you're going to be grateful that you did during this period of time. For Virgos, this new moon in Taurus is going to be lovely. That's because Taurus is an earth sign, just like Virgo is an earth sign. So during this period of time that the new moon is starting out, again, the new moon occurs on May 7th, and then it builds in light, crescendoing on May 23rd. During this period of time, as a Virgo, you're going to realize that you're being given things to build on. This could be materials, this can be resources, this can be even money. It's kind of like an elementary teacher being given supplies. They've written into the school to the school administrator saying, we're low on I don't know, iPads, we're low on pencils, we're low on whatever, and when can we get these supplies? And suddenly the school administration has heard them, and the supplies show up, and they open the packages with great glee as they pass them out to their students. This will be the image or the idea that I want to share with you, Virgos. You're getting the resources, you're getting the supplies, you're getting the backing that's going to enable you to do the things that you want to do. And this is a good sign. It's a good sign that you've been heard. But it's always a good sign when people deliver on their promises or honor their obligations. And this feeling that you now have the things that you need in order to do what you want to do is going to be wonderful. On one hand, it can be like, okay, now I'm well stocked and I can go about and do the things that I want to do. But on another hand, it may be the sort of thing that encourages you to build and to go further. To now that I have these supplies or resources, or now that I have this funding, I'm going to reach a little higher than I would normally reach for something like this. And that might be something else that's very much on your mind between May 7th and May 23rd. For people born under the zodiac sign of Libra, this new moon in Taurus is going to feel a bit awkward. The reason for that is because when you look at the Ptolemaic aspects between Taurus and Libra, they don't really line up. And what do I mean by they don't really line up? Well, the Ptolemaic aspects are simply a conjunction, an opposition, a square, a sextile, and a trine. None of those relationships exist between the zodiac sign of Taurus and the zodiac sign of Libra. In fact, the relationship that they make with one another is something in astrology that's called a quincunx. A quincunx basically describes an energy that's trying to get or understand the other energy. So one sign is trying to understand the other sign, but they just don't get each other. I'm sure that you've met people in your life in which, on paper, it looks like you should get along, you should be the best of friends, but you just don't get each other. Maybe you don't get each other's sense of humor. Maybe you don't get each other's sympathy or interests, or you have a very different take on things. It's not adversarial like a square, or difficult, oppositional like an opposition, but it doesn't click into a trine or a sextile either. The energy is off between you and this other person, and that's what exists between Libra and Taurus. The energy is off. They just don't find their fit, but at the same time, they don't feel like they can give up trying to find the fit. So they're kind of like drawn back to something that just doesn't click or just doesn't connect. What exacerbates this is the fact that both Libra and Taurus are ruled by Venus. So they do have something in common, which is Venus, all right? So what Taurus and Libra have in common is love and beauty. I mean, Venus, the planet Venus, is named after the goddess, the Roman goddess of love and beauty. So Taurus and Libra have in common love and beauty. They have in common art. They have in common, definitely have in common music, and cultured tastes, and just really enjoying the pleasures of life. So what's this thing that becomes irascible about these two signs? And what's irascible becomes exacerbated with a new moon in Taurus. So how are these two signs not connecting? Well, the big difference between Taurus and Libra is quantity versus quality. In other words, Taurus will always champion quantity. It's good to have a lot of stuff, and having a lot of stuff is good. And it doesn't matter if it's high end or knockoff, just having a lot of stuff is good as far as a Taurus is concerned. Libras aren't like that. It has to be the best stuff. Okay. And Libras wouldn't even use the word stuff in a sentence. It has to be high quality. It has to be designer brand. It has to be the best that it could possibly be. And if it's uncomfortable, like if it's such an object of beauty, but it doesn't feel comfortable, or it doesn't, or it's not utilitarian, it's not useful in a way, Libra could care less, because it's exquisite, it's elegant, it's luxurious. This is the best that it can be. This flies in the face of a new moon in Taurus, which is always going to side on pragmatism, on practicality, on the usefulness of something. Why would you go and get that kind of a high-end sweater when you can get something in the same color, with a more soft or comfortable fabric for, a quarter of the price? And Libra would simply respond with, well, you just don't understand. You just don't understand. So there's an aesthetic quality that's involved with Libra, that is, as I said, decidedly high end. And so this may be the thing that doesn't really quite gel for people born under the zodiac sign of Libra during this period of time when the new moon in Taurus is powerful. In other words, you may be being asked to sacrifice quality for quantity. All right. You can't have the refined item or the top end item. Isn't it just better to have an item, even if it is the cheaper version? And part of the Libras might be like, you know, I can't even imagine such a thing. All right. Um, but there may be something in which circumstances are forcing you, Libra, to settle for the cheaper brand, or to settle for quantity over quality. And I want to tell you that that you're going to like it, or this is a good choice, but no, no, I don't think you're going to like it at all. I think it's something you're going to have to put up with, and certain decisions that are being made at this period of time may be forcing your hand to choose a more practical approach, and something that you are not on board with at all. But nevertheless, as I was saying with Gemini, you have to work with this energy. So you have to make decisions along these lines. But then again, everything changes after May 25th, when Jupiter enters the zodiac sign of Gemini, and you can go back to going after your quality. You can go back to your quality of life and your high end quality of life after that date. Scorpios always have a hard time of it when the sun is traveling through their opposite zodiac sign. Now, what do I mean by that? The sun is traveling through the opposite zodiac sign. What I'm referring to is the calendar year. And when the sun is in the season of Taurus, that means it is as far away from the zodiac sign of Scorpio as it could possibly be. Scorpio is the heart of the fall. It's the heart of autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere. And Taurus is the heart of spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. What this always brings out with Scorpio is financial stress. Uh, And there's this feeling that Scorpios can feel, particularly during this time, and it's going to really prey upon you with this new moon in Taurus. You're going to feel that, like, no matter what you do, you just can't make a living on your own. Um, there's a difference to the approach of finances between Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus, as I said earlier, is a spring sign and it has a more optimistic view of work and money and resources. Okay. The sun's just starting out in the agricultural year, and Taurus expects that, I'll just keep on working until, I stop working, and I'll probably be working and producing all my life, and that's the way it's going to be. All right. Scorpio, because it's associated with autumn, is very aware that things don't last. It's very aware that that the land doesn't always deliver produce. I mean, in the spring, the land is delivering. You're starting to see buds and all these sorts of things. But in fall, all of that abundance of the summer has disappeared. The leaves have turned, and you're looking at scarcity. So Scorpios always carry this emotional sense of scarcity, or a better way of putting it is Scorpios always carry this feeling of scarcity around finances that has an emotional impact on them. Where Taurus is very much about financial security, you go and you work, you get the money, and then you build your wealth, or you build your financial security. Scorpio is emotional security around finances. So Scorpios feel like there has to be X amount of money in the bank. Scorpios have to feel like the money is protected in some way, that it's not going to run out. And that can be a problem with Scorpios because Scorpios do love to spend quite lavishly, but at the same time, they're very fearful or anxious about too much being spent. Another thing that often happens with Scorpios is that they can find themselves in financial situations where they are beholden to someone else. For instance, Scorpios may be in relationships where the partner or the spouse makes more money than they do, and they always feel, kind of inadequate. Like, I don't make as much money as my spouse or my partner does, and I really should, and I feel kind of inadequate with this. Or Scorpios may be in situations where their family funds them. The maybe mom and dad are still writing out checks, or something along those lines. And so there can be this feeling that they're not funding themselves. And that can also bring up feelings of guilt and even shame. Or what I've often seen is Scorpios are in job positions. They make their money by curating the money that belongs to other people. In other words, they're the ones who are looking after other people's property or other people's finances. And so it's their job to maybe nurture those finances. But at the end of the day, those finances belong to someone else, and they don't belong to Scorpio. So this feeling that your own money will never belong to you, that you will always be beholden to someone else, this just happens to be the time of year when you feel that most acutely. Now, there are certain planetary configurations that are taking place in the sky that actually look quite wonderful for Scorpio, and those configurations are going to be taking place between May 16, but more powerfully as we get closer to May 23rd. And this may actually be associated with an opportunity for Scorpios. But this is a time of year where Scorpios kind of go into panic attacks about finances or money, or the stress levels rise and the anxieties rise. And some of that may have to do with your circumstances. But as an astrologer, I'm also want to say it's that time of year. The sun is traveling through your opposite sign. So it's as far away from your sign as it can be. And so you're going to feel a depletion of energy, and you're going to feel a depletion of reserves. This will become more acute with the new moon in Taurus. So what I want to say is, you know, work with your anxieties practically, okay? Or reasonably is probably a better way of putting it. Work with it reasonably. Understand that this might be a time of year where you're very emotionally vulnerable to these stresses and anxieties, and that and that they're pushing buttons in you about dependency and about self-sufficiency. So what I would sort of advise is to kind of like write it out. I mean, if there are certain adjustments you need to make, go ahead and make them, but please see them as adjustments and not as things you all of a sudden have to be doing differently in your life. It's like when someone goes on a diet, you don't go on a crash diet because you're only going to end up back where you began, okay? But where you adjust or moderate your diet and introduce nutrition and new ways of eating and new ways of cooking and maybe even new foods into your diet. That way you are cultivating a healthy body. I want to work with that idea with the attitudes about money, cultivating a healthier approach to money. Money doesn't come into your life, Scorpio, because you envision it or set an intention or something like that. You work to make your money like everyone else. Um, but the thing is, when you can align your intention with what you want to do and how you want to do it, and when you can manage your anxiety, you're going to find that money actually is much more of a friend than it is a foe. Sagittarians are also going to have a little bit of an awkward relationship to this new moon in Taurus. Taurus is very much a here and now type of zodiac sign. Taurus is associated to the bull. The bull is very territorial. It's associated to cattle. We often see cattle as being penned in, or they graze over territory, which has fences around it, maybe over long miles or things like that, depending on the size of a ranch or a grazing area. But the idea is that Taurus is very much about turf, okay, and owning the turf. So Taurians have this kind of here and now approach to life. They don't get too caught up in the future, and they don't get too drawn to the past. They're pretty much a present-oriented sign, which it could be argued can be seen in all the different spring signs. But you're going to see it very much with Taurus, which is kind of like, okay, this is what we have to work with. This is what's up. This is the problem we need to solve. So let's go ahead and address it now rather than putting it off or postponing it for later. Moreover, Taurus, being an earth sign, has a sort of bottom line approach to life. When negotiating a deal or trying to figure out how to make the most of an opportunity, Taurus, in its here and now way, can be very much, well, you're better off if you can take what you can get. Okay, and that phrase, take what you can get, is very Taurian. And that phrase, take what you can get, or you're better off just taking what you can get, is very anti-Sagittarian. Okay, now, why is that anti-Sagittarian? Sagittarians always see things as being more or better. What's the most I can get out of this? Or could I do better than the situation that I have? Or, you know, when I entered into these negotiations, I had all these ideas about what I wanted to get out of this deal or this association or working with this company. Sagittarians are a fire sign. They're full of the future. They they they're full of the future. They see in the future flickering possibilities. And not only do they see those possibilities, Sagittarians become very emotionally invested in those possibilities or even personally invested in those possibilities. Our phrase for it these days is pretty much, dreaming big, and getting too caught up in that. But that doesn't really speak to the spiritual investment. People born under Sagittarius see the future as being full of possibility. All right. And this is why they feel personally invested in the future and let's say spiritually invested in the future, that perhaps with faith, perhaps with belief. Actually, let's get rid of the word perhaps. Sagittarius is about faith and belief. I have the faith. I have the belief that I'm going to realize my aims in the future. All fire signs are future oriented that way. And so this is something that drives the fire signs, particularly Sagittarius, which is more than happy to give up what it has and to go off to seek its future, to seek its fortune somewhere else. So being told by a new moon in Taurus that you better take what you can get feels to a Sagittarius like an affront. It feels to a Sagittarius like they're being told to settle for less. And this is exactly what the new moon in Taurus is telling you, to take what you can get. And if that means settling for less, to settle for less, because it's better to have something, as far as a Taurus moon is concerned, than it is to not have something. A Taurus moon isn't going to sacrifice something based on pride. Okay. A Taurus moon energy isn't going to give away the bird that it has in hand for the two that might be rustling around in the bush. Okay, a Taurus moon is very much about what do I have in my corner? And I may have to settle for that, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way forever. Circumstances may change, opportunities might emerge, and I could actually build on what I have. And Taurus, by the way, is a sign that naturally builds. All earth signs have a natural building instinct in them. Sagittarians are more adventurous. And what I mean by adventurous, they're more likely to pull up stakes and go live somewhere else, go be somewhere else, go find themselves somewhere else. So the future to a Sagittarius speaks to the same impulse that they have of wanting to go and visit a foreign land. Okay. Sagittarians are famously associated to travel, particularly world travel, and the love of faraway destinations, going someplace I've never been before, and immersing myself in the experience of another people and another culture that's different from mine. Sagittarians have that same relationship to the future, a future that's different than my present, or a future that's different from my past. So being told by a new moon in Taurus, you better take what you can get, and that it might even be settling for less, is absolutely going to rub a Sagittarius the wrong way. But the thing is, not all planetary aspects are going to serve you, or they're not all, yes, not all planetary aspects are going to serve you. They're not all going to give you what you want. We're used to thinking of problematic planetary aspects as bringing problems, bringing difficult times. What we're not so accustomed to thinking of is how do you work with a problematic planetary aspect and work with it in your life. Now, in some ways, that might be bracing yourself or taking a hit, but it can also be almost harnessing that energy that is being introduced. So, if a new moon in Taurus is saying you better take what you can get, and it might be settling for less, you might want to think this might be a period of time in which taking what I can get is a good thing. Because if I were to hold out, I might be faced with more diminishing returns. Or this might be a time that, okay, I settle for less now, and to treat it more like, all right, you had a higher speed limit on the freeway, and now you've exited the freeway and you're in a suburban neighborhood, and no, you can't go 75 miles per hour. You switch to 25. And that's kind of almost the attitude that I would advise for this type of planetary energy. And that the settling for less doesn't last forever, but at the same time, you might find that settling for less secured your foothold and may have actually even given you entree to alternatives that you might not have been recognizing before. The message that I have for Capricorn with this new moon in Taurus taking place on May 7th is joy. The type of joy that I'm talking about here is spring joy. Yes, it's the joy that comes with spring. Spring always makes us feel very happy. We can be sneezing and we can have allergies and all those sorts of things as well. But for the most part, spring makes us feel happy. There are flowers, there are beautiful colors, things look fresh and resplendent, and there's this feeling in the air of fresh possibilities, of new life and new growth. This is particularly important for people born under the zodiac sign of Capricorn. As I referred earlier when I was describing the zodiac sign of Taurus, Taurus is the most optimistic of all the earth signs. Taurus believes that if I work hard and if I commit to the activity, then I'm going to reap what I sow. I'm going to produce wonderful, tangible results that I can enjoy at the end of the day. And so Taurus's attitude about work and producing is really quite innocent. It doesn't have a lot of worry and stress that's involved with it. That is not the attitude that Capricorn shares. Capricorn is a winter sign here in the Northern Hemisphere. And even if Capricorns were born into privilege and status, Capricorns are always worried that the money's going to run out or that they're going to be faced with reversals of fortune that will bankrupt them financially or spiritually or emotionally. And Capricorns are really always looking for the next test, the next trial, the next challenge in their life. This is something that they very much respond to. And it's a fascinating difference between Taurus and Capricorn. Taurus enjoys the pasture. Taurus is named after the bull and cattle. They graze and they wander and they travel and they fill their bellies and they have a joy in life, all right? Capricorn is named after a goat, which is consistently scaling higher and higher and higher heights, where there's less grass, if they can find any, where the drop is frightening should they fall off the side of the cliff. And why are the goats traveling to the top of mountains anyway? All right, so this is what drives a Capricorn. It wants to accomplish and achieve. Those accomplishments and achievements need to be higher and need to be steeper than everything that came before. And so Capricorn is always climbing those heights. Capricorn can get not lost in the heights, it doesn't get, airy headed or anything like that, but it can get lost in the trials. It can get lost in the tests, and it can get lost in the tribulations. And what's nice is when a Capricorn is reminded that the world isn't going to come to an end if they come up short or if they have to do something differently than what they've done before, or if that steep mountain isn't as scalable as they originally thought and anticipated. There's a beautiful grounding quality to the new moon in Taurus. And I don't mean grounding as in like practical and pragmatic, but grounding as in feeling the ground underneath you, feeling ground, Capricorn, feeling soil, Capricorn, instead of craggy rocks or struggling to find the right foothold as you scale the heights. This reminder this reminder of your material life. Okay. Remember that the two words for all earth signs are health and wealth. This reminder that you're in good health, or you could be in good health if you made certain changes in your life. Okay. But this reminder of health, of your body, of the body's pleasures, of being here and now, of feeling your turf, that no matter what anxieties you may face, financial anxieties you may face, they aren't answered by succeeding at the test, because even Capricorn, if you succeed at the test, you'll enjoy that for a bit, and then you'll go back to feeling anxious again. This period of time, this new moon in Taurus, allows you to set the intention of being here and being now, not being so looking far down the road or looking up at the top of the cliff, but being here and being now and celebrating your life, and maybe, just maybe, letting some of that natural spring-like optimism filter in to your horoscope. Aquarius, like Gemini, which is another air sign, likes to see all the possibilities. But where Gemini can sometimes get lost in all the different variables and all the different choices, what Aquarius does is that it maps out all the different possibilities and all the different choices, and it goes a little further than that. Aquarius will look at all the different actions and it will work out all the different consequences to those actions. All right. And it will sort of design a network. This action could lead to this consequence, that's consequence, this consequence. Whereas this action would lead to this consequence, that consequence, another consequence, and this action could. So Aquarians are always working out scenarios in their head. And these aren't like wistful scenarios. These are architecturally designed scenarios, all right? These are scientifically proven scenarios. I mean, Aquarians have an almost hypothetical approach to each of the possible avenues that they could go. This is a sign that does a lot of thinking, which is why Aquarians are up in the middle of the night, because they can sometimes find it impossible to turn the mind off. It just keeps thinking. So Aquarians can work with all these different possibilities in the abstract. Okay, almost think of it as a flight plan in a way. Like, here's the flight plan for this particular flight. We're going to go here, go there. This is how we get from here to there, right? So Aquarians have these different sort of like flight plans that they've worked out, and they can get very you know uh, involved in wanting to see through all the different possibilities. Aquarius is a fixed sign, so if it has decided on a flight plan, elected to pursue a particular path, it's not going to diverge from it. It's going to follow it. And that's a difference with Gemini. Gemini, if they're like sort of like, this is a path that I elected to take and it's not really working. Let's find a new, path. Gemini is like Siri or whatever those navigational devices are, continually reworking how it can get from here to there. It's got no problem doing something along those lines. What happens with Taurus, and as we have already established, Taurus owns turf. There's this ground that it covers. It can be penned in a small space, or it can graze over a very large space. But people born under Taurus are very territorial, very turf identified. And this is what the zodiac sign can introduce as an energy. We've also talked about the idea of be here now, that this is what you have that's in front of you. And so what's going to happen here with the new moon intermingling with the Aquarius energy here is that the new moon in Taurus is going to insist that there is only one outcome. All right. So what you may be faced with, Aquarius, is this feeling that you have these designs, maybe even these grand designs of what you want to do, but now you're being told to choose one. There's only one that you can have. I don't know. It's a little bit like Christina in Mommy Dearest when Joan Crawford says to her, "These are all lovely toys that you have, Christina, and you can only choose one because you're going to give the rest of them away to girls and boys who are less fortunate than you." And Christina responds, of course, with, "Why?" But anyway, but coming back to Aquarius, Taurus is telling you that you can only have one, that there is only one outcome that you can invest in right now. And as an Aquarius, being an air sign, you like your possibilities and you like your alternatives, and you're not going to take kindly to that. You don't like that there's only one. And you may question it and you may have a problem with it, but trust me, there's only going to be one outcome. So the sooner, Aquarius, that you can get yourself into this mindset of choosing one flight plan or one course of action, and sort of bringing your blinders in like this so that you can focus on it, and not get lost in all the alternative universe actions and reactions to your one course of action. This can actually be a gift in your situation right now. Maybe you're involved in finishing up a project. Maybe you're being asked to commit to a venture. It's something in which you're sort of bringing something in for a landing that's going to then lead to something else, but you need to see this through right now. So you need to commit to this course of action right now and not to get caught up in what all the other possibilities could be, or to stress about what is going to be invoked because you committed to this one course of action. It may feel very limiting having your horizons narrowed or putting on psychic blinders, okay? But in this regard, this is the gift of Taurus, because by getting you to focus on just one outcome, you're actually going to emerge from this period that ends on May 25th with one hell of a result. A new moon in Taurus is very conducive to a sun in Pisces. Not only is the new moon in Taurus very conducive, it forms a sextile to your zodiac sign, but it begins a series of aspects that culminate with a beautiful departing sextile that the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus will be making on May 23rd to Neptune in your own zodiac sign. So, what's beautiful about this departing sextile is that departing sextiles inspire you to take what you've learned or to take what you've gained or acquired and then apply it to your life. All right. When we approach a planet, let's take an approaching sextile since we're talking about a sextile today. When we approach a planet, with with an expectation. You know, we want to see that planet. We want to visit with that planet. We want to reach that destination, and we have things that are associated to it. Maybe our hopes will be fulfilled, our aspirations will be realized. Maybe we'll finally get that date that we've been pining away for. Okay, so that's the way that we feel when we approach. It's like when you approach a party and maybe you've brought the crudité or something like this. You approach a party like all kinds of excited to see who's going to show up. All right, so this is a planet approaching another planet to form an aspect like a sextile. When I talk about a departing sextile, okay, the party's ended. The party's ended. Your crudités were a smash hit. You flirted with that person across the room. Maybe they're departing with you. Okay, so or you're departing an experience having a feeling fulfilled and satisfied and inspired. You know, I'm so glad that I took this time to spend the weekend with these wonderful friends of mine, and I really have to make a point of seeing them more in the future. We have such a great time, and honestly, I don't understand why we let so much time go by because we always have delightful fun when we get together. That can be a departing sextile, like we had a great time, and I'm making vows. I'm making vows that we'll get together again. We will reunite together again, and we will have a wonderful time. So with this departing sextile, which culminates on May 23rd, and really begins with the new moon in Taurus, it's going to be a feeling in this intervening time that you've entered into something where you've really enjoyed yourself and it was really really lovely, uh, and you want to do more of it. And this is a good thing. It's like I took this workshop or I took this course and it opened my eyes about spiritualism, or it opened my eyes about accounting, and I really want to go ahead and do this. You're feeling fulfilled and confident, and this is a wonderful thing. So this is the energy that you're going to be experiencing as Jupiter finishes up its stay in Taurus and forms a departing sextile to Neptune in your zodiac sign. All of this originating for this particular chapter or episode with the new moon in Taurus. But the new moon in Taurus is also going to leave you with a little extra something to think about. And that is sort of, you can think of it as a creative challenge, which is you need to produce something instead of just dream about it. Now, why is this new moon in Taurus saying this? The new moon in Taurus is saying this because Taurus is an earth sign. Earth has to produce something. Water signs don't have to produce things. Okay, and that's not to say that they're dreamy or flaky or anything along those lines, but water signs are very creative to the extent that they can live in the flow of creativity. They can live in the visionary aspects of creativity. They can live in the rapture of a creative vision, but they never have to do anything about it. That experience of that joy, of that ecstasy, of that rapture of vision is something that's so moving for a water sign that it's fine with it. Earth signs, that's not the case. When you're on Earth, you plant a seed and it sprouts and you cultivate it and you weed around it and you want it to produce a harvest, which is usually experienced in the zodiac sign of Virgo and Libra. Okay, so you plant a seed with the expectation that it's going to produce something. You're going to fight for it to produce it. You're going to make sure that you water, especially if you're on water restrictions, or you're going to look over your produce for bugs or mites or anything that might be, or nasty little rabbits getting into your pumpkin patch or vegetable patch or something along those lines. So there's a protective quality to what you produce, and there's a nurturing quality to what you produce, and there's a laboring quality to what you produce. So earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, need to produce something tangible at the end of the day. They need to hold out their hand and get something that they can weigh in the palm of their hand and say, I earned that. I made that. I built that. This is very much an earth quality. It is not necessarily a water quality. Okay, because for water, as I mentioned earlier, they can feel awash in the creative experience itself. Think about the difference between hoeing rows to plant your seed and build and grow lettuce versus kelp beds awash in the oceans. Okay, and perhaps that will help clarify the idea. This isn't a judgment. This is just different terrain. Life on Earth is different than life under sea, which is something that Pisces is always being reminded of time and time again. What this really supportive and encouraging new moon in Taurus is showing you is that you can produce. You can be creative and you can produce a something. And in having produced this something, and maybe you are in the stages of producing something or putting the finishing touches of something as you and I talk here today, that the feeling that you produced this makes you feel like you want to experience that again. Okay. It's just like I had a marvelous time at that party. My credites were a hit. Okay. It's this feeling like I really worked on this book, or I really worked on this song, or I repapered this room. I repapered this room, or I built a piece of furniture, or maybe I upholstered a piece of furniture. So you're feeling very proud of what you've done. And this is a wonderful thing. And there were struggles and there were challenges and tests, but boy, that chair looks really good. Or that new color on the wall looks really fantastic. And I'm so glad that I did it myself. So this new moon in Taurus is going to be encouraging for you, is going to make you feel like not only do you want to do it again, but maybe try something different or try something more, or volunteer to paint the rooms of friends' houses, something like that. But it's making you feel like you can do more with this. So it's more than just making you feel productive, which can always be a nice feeling. But when you combine creativity with productivity, you start getting ideas and plans for your future. You start getting ideas and plans for where this could go and what could happen with this. And what if I started an LLC? Okay, so you start getting these ideas. And this is the wonderful place that you're going to find yourself, Pisces, as a result of this new moon on May 7th that culminates in those wonderful planetary configurations on May 23rd.